Welcome back, everybody, to another commentary. This one's going to be on the Necrotic Wake. I did this in a Pug plus 14 on beta. My Brewmaster's about item level 210 in this video. And let's go. Right out of the gate, you got some extremely close mobs to the start of the dungeon. So I usually just pull in these 3 blight bags with the 4 soldiers. Each of these soldiers is worth a lot of count. In this area, the blight bags are all worth very little count, but they die fast, they don't do on-death affixes, and they explode, hitting everybody in the party as well as any mobs nearby. So they actually do some damage to the mobs that are around. So if the damage is healable, which right now it is, it just did like 10% of people's health when they exploded and left like a 3-second disease, then they're okay to pull. Maybe in like really high keys, we're gonna have to skip those later. Second pack is a Corpse Harvester, Vanguard, and a Soldier. Soldier is the same mob, worth good count. These Corpse Harvesters do a Drain Fluid cast. It's one of those casts that has a wind-up before it stuns someone, but then after the wind-up cast, it has a channel that will fully incapacitate a player until someone breaks the channel with either a stun, knock, or an interrupt. Typically, you just want to interrupt them before they get the actual channel off. The other mob is this Vanguard, does very high tank damage. Has a really fast meat shield cast. Same kind of cast, has a wind up and then a channel. If you can catch it before the channel starts, then it doesn't gain a shield at all. So you just want someone, you typically want one melee kick assigned to the Vanguard and everybody else assigned to the Harvester. So if I was quick there, I would have prevented this shield of the Vanguard. But I think I was kicking the Harvester instead. Got some more blight bags on the right. You'll notice there's a lot of trash in this first area. Lots of blight bags, lots of soldiers. Every patrol is either blight bags or soldiers, so at least it's simplified in that manner. You can see I disease dispelled the healer as soon as the last one died there. Another pack on the right here is another Vanguard Harvester pack, except this one has 2 Harvesters, so this requires a lot of kicks. In this pack, I think you would want 2 people on each Harvester and you'd stun the Vanguard. Or alternatively, 1 person kicks the Vanguard every time, and then just use AoE stops on the Harvesters instead. Like Sweep, Ring of Peace, Paralyze, all work to stop all these casts. You just gotta assign someone to them. This is Necrotic, as I'm sure you noticed in this video. Necrotic Bolstering. Probably the worst possible affixes in combination with each other. These soldiers are really annoying on Necrotic. You'll see they refresh me like 3 more times here, I think. I'm kiting, but then they'll jump to me and refresh. Someone caught the meat shield cast in time there. Vanguard did not gain a shield. The shield can't be purged either, so it's really critical. If you can find a time to interrupt it, it's very good. For any monk players out there, I'm Zenmedding while I'm running away just to reduce some of the minor necrotic damage. I'm just like about to die, and it actually paid off. The Zenmed may have saved me. This is the first pride. If you didn't notice earlier, I picked up a spear. Let me go find where I did it. I think it's that spear right there. Unless someone grabs it here. So there's a bunch of items in this dungeon though. Just laying on the ground everywhere. This is one of them right here. The spear I'm about to pick up. It gives you an extra action button at the top of your UI, like I do, or wherever you have that on your UI rather. But when you actually use the spear, it has a cast time. It'll do massive dot damage to a target, and any other targets between you and your target. So it's kind of a skill shot. Like if you want to hit a bunch of mobs, you can definitely pull a couple packs together and then spear the farthest mob and make the pack really easy. Here, I'm just casting it on the Pride. I'm in a Pug. Optimally, I think I would have rather pulled a pack into the Pride and then speared it because it basically one-shots it. Look at the damage it does here. Doesn't quite one-shot it, but I did do like 7k as a tank to the Pride, which is like triple what you would normally do. So this is one of the patrols. This 3-pack of soldiers goes straight forward and back on this line. There's another 2-pack of soldiers over here past the other pack that goes about like that. They just go back and forth around the boss arena. And there's a 3rd patrol, the blight bags. I think I already killed them, but they go in like a big circle around this area, off screen to the left here. You want to watch out for those. Those will pull into packs you're doing really easily. Someone actually tags the boss. It's bolstering, so I know these soldiers are going to bolster. If they were blight bags, they wouldn't bolster, but since they are soldiers, they will. So I know this is either going to be a wipe or a reset, but I figured Since it's a pug, I might as well let him kill the soldiers. They'll see it bolsters the boss. And then I'll go try to reset. Was the current plan. This is the first boss, Blightbone, but I'll show like what happens after. I'll talk about the mechanics in just a second. So yeah, we bolstered the boss. We actually end up wiping, I think. I skip ahead, but we'll come back to that boss. Okay, so we wipe. While he's respawning, since it's a pug, I'm just like doing area recovery. Luckily the whole group didn't disband, by the way. It's kind of a miracle in a pug. I pull a pack behind while we're waiting for the boss to respawn. This is another pack with the same mobs. The two harvesters are the key thing here. I want to make sure that kicks go out on the drained fluid casts right here. Throw flesh just targets a random player. It does do a good chunk of damage though. And then we got 3 soldiers as well. Soldiers give good count. This pack is worth a lot of count. Trying to drop my necrotic. I think this guy refreshes. Yep, of course. And I've had enough, so I just go to farthest place possible. Reset. We're good. We go back in. I would say this area is pretty complex with lots of patrols. You can still see the blight bags over here. They kind of park right here next to this gatekeeper. One of which is the mob that I avoid. There's 3 gatekeepers in this area. They all have big portals next to them. I don't think you really want to pull those unless they get nerfed heavily between when this video is made and when you watch it. They do a ton of AoE group damage. They spawn soldiers that are worth no count out of their portals constantly that you have to pick up. And they have extremely high hitting tank casts as well. Okay, so we're pulling the first boss for real this time. Blightbone has this heaving wretch ability he puts on a random player. It basically just spawns 3 worms and hits them for high magic damage initially. You want to kill the worms ASAP, and ideally you want to kill them all in the same spot so you don't fill up the arena with stuff on the ground right off the bat. Every time they blow up, they create that green circle. So try to just slow them, stun them, group them up, and kill them together pretty quick. The boss himself also creates a pool now and then, so you're going to have a plan on where to move him as a tank. It's not too bad, just kind of hug the edge of the arena, especially if you didn't pull the gatekeepers. You can see the priest got the breath there. He moved away from the party and put the breath kind of close by the boss, so everyone can hit. The other mechanic on these worms is that you don't want them to melee anyone more than 2 times. As soon as they melee a 3rd time successfully, they'll start exploding, and you can't stop the explosion. You have to actually just kill the worm before it explodes. And if the explosion goes off, it's probably a wipe. The boss also has a tank hit. I'm just pressing Purifying Brew after every one, basically. If you're a active mitigation tank, or I'm sorry, if you're a reactionary tank like Blood Decay, make sure you Death Strike after each one. Try to have high enough HP beforehand. But yeah, if you do those 2 mechanics well, the tank hit and the worms, then this fight is pretty easy. I like to tank him like kind of inside his own puddles, by the way, like that, because and a lot of people probably know this, but nothing parries in Mythic Plus. You can't, if you're a melee player and you're fighting something in front of it, it's fine. It can't parry you. The only benefit is for players like Rogue, who actually get benefit from hitting a target from behind, but you can't be parried or anything. In BFA, it was like that as well, except for the one mob, Shadow of Zool, because he was also a raid mob. Same model. I'm Night Fae in this video. You can see my Failing Stomp going out. It's doing a lot of healing on the party, which is great to see. I think I checked that at some point in this run. But yeah, that's the end of the first boss. Now we're getting out of this area. Very scary area. Something I should mention, the items on the ground, there's the spear we already talked about, but over there at the beginning of the instance, there was a hammer on the right. A hammer just stuns one mob for 8 seconds and does pretty high damage. It's like 60k damage. And there's also a shield over here by the 3-pack that I didn't pull. And the shield is a channel for 8 seconds. You can't do anything while you channel it, but it does reduce the damage of you and any party member within 10 yards by like 80% for 8 seconds. It's pretty strong. Okay, so this is a new pack. The Zul'Ramus Necromancer is the key here. He's the one that you need to kill. All these other mobs around him are just minions that he summoned. So as soon as the Necromancer dies, all of his minions die. And the Necromancer is the only one that gives count in this pack. So you can just CC the mage, not have to worry about kicks at all, and kill the Necromancer. And you want to do that for every Necromancer pack. If you have any kind of CC that can get undead, so Freezing Trap, Paralyzed, Blind, Shackle Undead. I think that might be it. So notice, as soon as I touch a death, the Necromancer, everything dies. It's only worth 8 count, but it's decent. This 2-pack is also worth the same count. Sorcerer, Bone Carver. Bone Carver basically just bleeds the tank. I believe that's his only mechanic. The Sorcerer is the more dangerous mob, and you'll see a bunch of those as we fight the next packs. The Necrotic bolts need to be stopped. It hits tanks for like half their HP, even on Tyrannical right now. If you're fighting multiple sorcerers, make sure you stop those Necrotic bolts. Here's the Bone Flay. I think that's dodgeable for dodge tanks, probably parryable as well. But just natural dodges. Okay, so we're pulling 3 Blight Bags. Those are just the 1-count mobs that explode and give a 3-second disease. We're pulling a Skeletal Marauder, Sorcerer that we just talked about, and a new mob, Bone Mender, I believe is what it's called over there. The Marauder is probably the most important kick on a pug. Make sure that you, the tank, get the Marauder kick. It's a fear. And he also has a huge 180-degree cleave on you. There it is, there's a massive cleave. Doesn't have a huge animation, but just watch out for that. As soon as that Shadow Well appears, it's a short cast from the Sorcerer. So the Sorcerer casts Necrotic Bolt and then Shadow Well eventually. It's probably his second cast, I think, usually. As soon as the Shadow Well goes down, if you strafe out of it, I think you avoid all damage, but you may take 1 tick still. But Shadow Well's not too bad, just move about this far where I am from it and you're fine. But again, the main thing to watch out for is Necrotic Bolt. One more thing on that Marauder, you may have wondered why it just died from half health in less than a second. So as soon as the Marauder does the fear cast, he does a cleave, and then he also gives himself a shield. But as soon as he gives himself the shield, the whole party should swap to him, because as soon as you break the shield, it hurts him for all of his health, like right there. Alright, so this spawns the 40% Pride. The first Pride, if you remember, I speared, so it died really quickly. And while we're fighting this Pride, let me point out something else. Over here on against the wall, there's another item. It's the orb. The orb does massive damage, so make sure someone in the group gets the orb. The orb and the spear both do massive AoE damage if you use them right. To use the orb, you basically just hit your extra action button the same way, and then if you're in melee range, it just pulses for heavy magic damage every second. I think for 8 seconds. We're going to pass a couple more items here. There was a hammer right here. Someone already picked up, looks like. Hammer is the single target stun. And there's a spear off the screen just up here on the ground as well. Make sure you make good use of these items. They're going to help, especially week 1 with Mythic Zeros, I think. You can just insta-kill most packs with them. At the end of the bridge here, we have 2 Marauders. It just requires 1 kick each on the fears. So I'm going to kick Skull as the tank. Hopefully someone kicks X. And then X just got his shield, so as soon as the shield breaks, he dies. And same thing with Skull. Right there. This is a big tank-hitting mob. Skeletal Monstrosity was basically unpullable all of beta until recently. They nerfed him heavily. He did that Shatter cast on the tank. It's natural dodgeable. I think it's parryable probably too. It used to give a huge damage taken increase debuff, but now it does not give any debuff at all. So this mob isn't too bad. All he really does is melee and then shatter you as a tank. Move out of the Freezing Winds cast and you're good. And this guy's worth like 12 count, I believe. And when I say count, I mean like the specific measurement of enemy forces for any Mythic Plus veterans out there. This guy has a humongous patrol. He patrols from this spot all the way to the second boss entrance, just about. So getting rid of him does free up the route a little bit. He may not be the most efficient mob to pull, but if you're new to Mythic Plus, you may want to get him out of the way. This is another set of the same mobs. The Bone Carver, it does the bleed on the tank. The Sorcerer has the really dangerous Necrotic Bolt casts and the Shadow Well cast that you see there, and a Marauder. This is another short patrol pack. They don't go too far, but they do patrol around the same, at least this middle area, and they intersect with the skeletal monstrosity quite a bit too. This is a common pack to pull in this key. Since it's just 2 bone carvers, it's only tank damage. Those are typically the best packs. Also because they're just sitting by a spear on the ground. This is the 3rd spear in the dungeon, I believe. You see I moused over the bleed right there. Looks like it actually reduces maximum health too. Didn't know that. So I have the spear. I can't remember if I use it on the pride here or not. Optimally, again, I should be using it on multiple targets. Just using it on the farthest target from me and hoping it cleaves through several things on the way to my target. Looks like I am saving it. Maybe I pull the second boss with it. That's another good way to get lots of threat. These items are really unique. I like that they're in this dungeon. They also can crit. The spear can definitely crit. I don't know about the orb, but if you're a rogue player and you have the Master Assassin buff in stealth, if you use an item with that buff, it makes it crit 100% of the time. So your items will do basically double damage what other people's will. And you can game that with other damage increasing abilities. Like I think Hunter True Shot also gives it a lot more crit chance. This is a 4-pack, all the same mobs that we've seen so far. Marauder. Oh, that was a new cast though. So this pack has a Marauder, Bone Carver, Bone Mender, and a Sorcerer. But one more cast goes off from the Sorcerer, which is very conditional. This is a weird cast. It's called Final Bargain. I'm gonna try to catch it when he casts here. The Bone Mender is actually casting it. So 2 mobs can cast it, the Sorcerer or the Bone Mender. Final Bargain full heals one of the mobs, but then makes them get chunked by their own buff every second until they die. So he full heals the Sorcerer here, but watch how fast he dies anyway. So it looks like it kills the Sorcerer in about 5 seconds. It's kind of like Painful Motivation from Freehold, but it only casts on low health mobs, it seems. So it's like, I don't really know what they intend with that one. The mob is going to die in about the same amount of time, whether the Final Bargain got cast or not. If you can somehow bait it out to high bolster stacked mobs, maybe it's a benefit. But otherwise, I can't really see it. So this is another Necromancer pack. The pugs actually marked the 2 mages in this pack, which I think was really cool to see. You can just CC these again and not have to worry about their tank casts and volleys they do on the group. So if you have Paralyze and Trap, or Blind, or Shackle Undead, just do that, and then taunt the Necromancer over and just single target him down. You'll notice he also heals his minions every second. There's really no point in AoEing, just full single target. Necromancer packs look very scary, but they're not too bad. So yeah, that finishes the last Necromancer. There's a second Necromancer as well, but he was back like behind the boss arena over there on the left. Okay, so this is the second boss area. In Mythic Plus, you want to make it to this area with 193 count, or about 68%. You can see here on my UI, I do track individual count. I think that's very valuable as a tank player, even as a DPS player too. You can see exactly how much count you need. Like I was discussing that the monstrosity was worth 12 count, the blight bags are worth 1 count, and if you know you need a specific number before going somewhere, like 193 here, then that can help quite a bit. Alright, so I guess I speared the 4-pack earlier. But what you can do with items is you can use the hammer or the spear as like heavy threat if you need to as a tank too, because the damage it does translates to threat. Second boss, Amarth, has the critical ability of summoning adds just like a Necromancer does. You'll see that we CC'd, or at least I CC'd one of the mages so we didn't have to worry about it. Just the same way as the Necromancer. Now, a lot of people think on beta right now that you have to kill these adds, but in reality you don't have to. You can leave it CC'd out there, but the only stipulation is in a second all the adds are going to explode. And the swirly that's on that ad is just invisible. So you just want to be far from the CC'd ads, and that's all. Kick the boss when you have available kicks for Necrotic Bolt. He puts a Necrotic Bolt out in random players. Okay, so here is the swirlies. You can see there's a couple underneath the boss where the melee mob bodies were. But right now, there is an invisible swirly around that CC'd mob. and over here too on this grazing trapped mob. So just be away from them when Final Harvest goes out, and you'll be fine. So every time he does that, the boss gets 5 stacks. You can see on my UI above his nameplate, unit frame. I think it just gives him 1% more damage, something like that per stack. So every time he summons Eds and then harvests them, he gains a little bit more damage, and that's how the fight scales. So here we just do the same thing. Pull the boss over to the crossbowman if he's not CC'd. The priority though should be, if your group only has 1 CC for undead, make sure you pick a mage. If you have 2, you can get a mage or the archer, or just both mages, like we usually do. And then if you only have 1 though, you will have to deal with 1 mage, so just have a ranged kick go out on the mage that you don't CC. That'll solve it. Other than that, this boss isn't too bad. Just put kicks into Necrotic Bolt and the mages, dodge the breath, and then dodge the Final Harvest. There's no tank hit, luckily. Just a threat challenge for the ads that spawn. After this boss dies, we do now have a checkpoint right here. So if you die in the Necropolis that we're about to go up to, then you'll respawn like right here, so you can take an angel back up whenever you can. This checkpoint is a godsend. They didn't have a checkpoint here originally, and it took like at least 5 minutes to get back. So props to Blizzard for listening to feedback there. There's a lot of RP in these dungeons with these angels that carry you places. There's portals all the time. Lots of waiting. Alright, so right off the bat you see there's 4 packs, 1 in each corner. One over here behind me and 1 in that corner. There's 2 patrolling packs. We got the spare parts right in front of us and the stitchwork patrol. And ideally I think you want to take out the patrols first. These spare parts fixate players. So as soon as I pull them, they're just going to run everywhere into my group. So the group wants to be somewhat stacked, or you can just use an Ursul's Vortex or Binding Shot or something on pull to keep them stacked up. But the dangerous part of this pack is the Collector and the Stitchwork. The Stitchwork hits the tank very hard and stacks up a armor reduction debuff over time. So it's kind of like a force the tank to kite mechanic. I'll talk a little bit more about that every time we see one. The Collector has some dangerous casts. He does the Drain Fluid cast, just like the Harvesters down below. But he also has another cast, I think it's Gore Spatter. Let's see if he does it. Oh, I should say, look at the 100 damage here. That is definitely the orb being used. The orb does massive damage. Okay, so those didn't cast anything because he used the item, but we'll see more here. So this is one of the same corpse collectors. We got 2 soldiers, same mobs from down below. Someone just kicked the Gore Spatter. If that cast goes out, it'll hit the party for about half our health on Tyrannical and apply a nasty disease. So make sure you rotate kicks on the Collector. This pack's pretty simple. Gore Spatter almost went out. The Hunter had the foresight to give it a bursting shot since we didn't have any kicks. You can see my Necrotic stacked up pretty high, even on that 3-pack. Okay, so I'm gonna go pull the other Stitchwork pack. There's 2 total Stitchworks. I think it's because I have CDs, that's why I decided to pull it. So Tenderize is one of the hits he does. It starts the debuff chain. I think it's like minus 15% armor now. It used to be 50%. And then he casts Mutilate, which just hits for high physical damage. You'll see I'm already being chunked pretty hard. It is Necrotic, so I'm gonna have to kite. He just Tenderized me again. I now have 2 stacks. Meanwhile, we're kicking the Collector on the side. Just Mutilate again. So I'm actually running. But the problem with this mob is he also targets the nearest player when the tank is not around. We like to call those anti-kite mechanics in the community. And it's really awkward because both Necrotic and his armor debuff is forcing you to kite as a tank. But since you're kiting, he also has an anti-kite mechanic where he kills your melee DPS. I tried to transcend to dodge my Necrotic stack refresh there, but a soldier was waiting for me. I roll out of his Tenderize. I actually drop stacks, but he does kill my healer, if you saw there. That is what I'm talking about. You'll see me run here. I roll out of his hit. And then he's gonna re-Q it right there on my healer. So since I'm out of range, he re-Qs it onto the nearest available target and just straight up one-shots him. Unfortunately. which is like not much you can do, especially in a pug. I just hope they fix that kind of mechanic eventually. But yeah, that'll be an adventure for you as a tank player. So since we do have a checkpoint, we just go back and we'll fight the Pride. No big deal. I should mention, you want to get as close to 193 count as you can before you go up. That's, again, 68% count. Because that means there's a gauntlet of trash coming up, and the 100% and the 80% prides will spawn at specific times. And you'll want the 100% pride to not spawn while another trash back spawns and comes at you. Also, that pride is still trying to reset. He just teleported down below. Really nice stuff. He's teleported back. He's still pulsing on the group, even though we're not in combat. Okay, so he finally reset. You can see his stacks went down to 1 instead of 16 when I'm targeting him. I'm just getting a food buff because it's a pug, waiting for everyone. Food buff is normally a waste of time, by the way. Normally. If only one person is missing food buff, and you want to stop and sit down for 10 seconds as a group, be my guest, but it is a minor time loss usually. I just did it because it's a bug. Alright, so we kill the Pride, and then we re-pull the Stitch work. So I'm being kind of ballsy with a pug. I'm pulling him into this pack. This does have a few new mobs. The Loyal Creation that we've seen before, but the Crafter, there's only one in the first area of the instance that I didn't pull, and there's 2 in this Necropolis. What he does is cast Throw Cleaver at a player, but you can use that Throw Cleaver to hurt other mobs instead of soaking it. So you see the Loyal Creation just got chunked to about half health. And if you keep this Crafter alive, which will definitely be the right strategy in high keys, then you can use his damage against the other mobs quite often. And the Prides as well, and even bosses right now. They'll probably fix using it on bosses though. I think that'll be very degenerate. On Bolstering Week, you can actually use one of those to one-shot the second boss. Which I have a clip of somewhere if anyone's interested. So you see I'm actually trying to wait out my stacks. I still have 3 seconds left of the armor reduction, but the Frost Mage in my group had other ideas, so he just went in. The Crafter also casts Repair Flesh right there. I just stunned it. It's a channel. Any channel in the game you can stop with stuns or end caps. So if you want to conserve interrupts, that's a good strategy. This has another one of the Crafters as well. So he's casting the Cleaver at the group, which is great because you definitely want help killing this giant Loyal Creation. I rolled away with Ring of Peace there to drop my Necrotic stacks. It's hard to see what they're doing, but he's throwing a Cleaver right now. It's going to one-shot one of those soldiers. Excellent. And then we'll finish up the last 2 mobs. So once you clean all the trash out of this area, it's mandatory. It spawns the Gauntlet of Trash next. So this is the 3rd boss just chilling up here, observing us fight his minions. So now he spawns 2 guys that throw cleavers. These are technically different mobs, but they do a lot of the same stuff. So they start off by just throwing 2 cleavers. One of our players just stood right in between them. That is definitely not what you want to do. So if both mobs are at these 2 X's, then the players they target just want to stand on opposite sides of the mobs. Like, you want to aim this X's cleaver at this X, and this X's cleaver at the other X. That way they chunk each other instead of killing one of your friends. Just click the Drain Fluids. One of them is about to do a Morbid Fixation cast. Here it is. If you have a Vanish or Feign Death or Shadow Meld, you can drop that cast instantly. Otherwise, you gotta run. Also, that guy has humongous melee range, so make sure you run far. Okay, so you can see the mage is baiting the cleaver onto the assistant there. We'll see what happens with the next ones. This is always really funny to watch as a tank. They can't target the tank with the cleaver. Alright, here he goes. Will he line it up with the Fixate at the same time? Oh, gamer. That was good. Alright, so an arrow went out. I'm actually going to soak this one because the other one was dead. I just ran into it. You can natural dodge that as a tank as well. I'm sure you can parry it. So if there's no target available for the cleaver, then you can either stop it with paralyze, you can sweep it, you can ring a piece it, or you can just soak it. I'm saying monk abilities, but any abilities like that will work as well. Alright, so this gore grind mini boss spawns automatically a couple seconds after those two die. You don't have time to do a full res on a player if that happens. They die, so they have to run back in between, or you can just battle res them. But this gore grind guy is basically the same mob as the Stitchwork, except he also has a second mechanic called Gut Slice, and it's just a frontal cleave. Targets a nearby player and attempts to gut slice them. Drop my Necrotic there. It's very hectic in this video. Sorry about Necrotic. Looks like he may have hit my mage on the way back. Same kind of mechanic where he just hits the nearest player if the tank's out of range. And yeah, you can see he does massive damage. Be careful with these giant abomination mobs. This is tyrannical, by the way, too. This isn't even fortified. So the last pack spawns here, Rot Spew. All these little guys around the last two mini-boss spawns that occur don't give count. So if you're worried about spawning Pride like I am right now at 280 count out of 283, then I'm like, oh, I hope they don't kill the little guys first. But as you can see here, they don't actually give count. They do on death affixes, so they do bolster, but they don't give count, which is kind of annoying. This guy does heavy melee damage around him. You'll see as soon as I go back into melee range of him, I have a disease debuff. I'm just getting hurt by his cloud. And these guys are just straight up abominations from Warcraft 3. They hit really hard, they have a disease cloud. They throw a disease on a ranged player, etc. So this is our 100% Pride. The boss is spawning right now behind me, since we finished all the trash here. And it's perfect timing because you can kill the Pride while he's doing the RP, and then go right into the boss. Just driving home the percentage again, 68% before you go upstairs. As a monk, I do want to have Touch of Death for this guy. Oh, you can see the priest and I had the disease debuff just from being near this cloud right here. Even though the mob's dead, he still has that disease, so stay away from it when you fight whatever's next. Alright, so this is the third boss. This boss is a very tank-intensive fight. These Sitchflesh creations basically do the same thing as the abominations in this Necropolis. So here's Mutilate on me. Boom. Hits me pretty hard. Luckily they don't apply the armor reduction though. The important mechanic is this arrow. So he's about to do the infamous hook that abominations do. And if you ever played Dota or League of Legends, there's always a hero that does this hook, you know? So you want to use this hook to hit his master, Sitchflesh up here. But if you're a DPS player or a healer, has a chance to target you, not the tank. So if you have this mechanic, tell your group that gets the mechanic to face away from the creation so they can see this guy with their eyes. And that way it's easier for them to line up the hook. Because the Sitchflesh creation isn't going to kill them. They have plenty of time to react. Slow this down just a little bit. So he starts the arrow, he has a wind-up cast. And the animation will change right there. You see the arrow change to a bigger arrow, and then he starts actually casting Meat Hook. So as soon as he starts that cast, you can move out of the place where you were baiting it before. So this player here did it perfectly, where he put it directly onto Sitchflesh, and then moved away. So now you lust, you pop all your CDs, and try to do as much damage to Sitchflesh as you can before he jumps back up. The jump is on a timer, I believe. So you just want to cut this fight down to as few phases as possible. He does the same morbid fixation mechanic as the trash did. And unfortunately our abomination died. You actually can game this boss pretty hard by keeping the abomination alive for a certain amount of time. If he was still alive there, we could have used his second hook to stop the fixate, for example. He spawns another creation once he goes back up. And this just has the same mechanics as before. He doesn't mutilate cast, and then he should cast the hook next. Yeah, here we go. So this is on the priest. As you can see, the priest is like directly against the boss there, so he knows he's gonna line up the hook correctly. I think that's a good way of doing it. Then as soon as he starts casting, he moves out. Gets the hook. We should finish the boss in this phase. As a tank player, as soon as the boss comes down, you want to pop CDs, because both the boss will hit you hard with Sever Flesh, they'll give you a dot with Stitch Needle soon, and the creation is probably still casting Mutilate on you at the same time. So you're going to have to take 3 heavy tank hits back to back to back. Does have the Embalming Ichor cast, that's just what creates this puddle on the ground over there. Okay, so that was a good example of using the hook to stop the fixate. This is the second hook that the Abomination casts, and it always overlaps with the Morbid Fixation, so you can see both of them casting their things right here. Luckily, I think the mage who he's targeting the hunter, Morbid Fixate. The hunter has the boss right next to the Abomination, so and if he was smart, he would move directly away from the Abomination, so that even if the boss started moving a little bit, the hook would still go in a straight line and catch him, stop the fixate. But he did do that very well. Props. I don't know if it killed the boss here in time before he jumps again. If someone misses a hook, this becomes really messy, because then you can start having 2 Abominations up at the same time. As you can see, every time he jumps up, he summons a new one. Otherwise, he starts spawning them on a timer. I think this boss will be a heavy pug killer. I think it's pretty challenging to do right. Here's another hook. He lines it up pretty well, I think. Yep, that looks good. So now the boss will die. Popping CDs here as he comes down. The priest barriers me, that's really big. Very nice. Touch of Death is available, by the way. If you're a monk player, you want to hold Touch of Death until your target is actually lower health than your maximum health. So like, I do have the ability to press it right now on Sitchflesh, but it's only going to do about 8,000 damage if I do it right now. If I wait till Sitchflesh gets down to exactly 50k, which is about where my health is in this video, then if I press Touch of Death right at that moment, it'll do 5 times the damage as it would have otherwise. As you can see there, I moved the boss into the hook in time, and then I Touch of Death. So watch out for all those mechanics. That might be the most important one to go over with your group before doing Mythic Zeros or your first bit of Mythic Plus, the hard boss. After he's dead, he summons a portal, and here's the last boss. So this is like a classic Lich boss. There's a bunch of ice mechanics. He acts like Jaina from Battle of Dazar'alor, if you played that. He just casts Ice Shard at you. It is physical damage though, it's like a physical magic cast. Then he has this Comet Storm mechanic. You just move around slowly in a circle so you can still hit the boss while you move. If you have melee DPS with you, I don't in this group, but if you have melee, tell them to stack on you and move the same direction. Especially if there's 3 of you, that's pretty important. And otherwise, just spread out your defensives and mitigate his constant high-hitting auto attacks here. Here's Comet Storm again. He sends a DPS player downstairs intermittently, and they have to go through a little gauntlet, and then they get back. So because of that, this is kind of a long boss fight. Not only does he do that, he also shields himself for like 5% of his max health, I think. Pretty often as well. So those 2 things combined, basically you're 2 DPSing this boss the entire time, as well as burning through your shield. So he just got another shield here. You can see us trying to get through it. It's going to be a long boss in high keys. There's the Dark Exile cast. I do know that immunities work against that if you saw the mage ice blocked there, and did not have to go through the gauntlet. I don't think certain immunities work, like I know Trell does not work on that. But for tank stuff, primarily, just keep mitigating his ice shards as best you can, move for Comet Storm, and then move out of the circle on the ground that this boss creates whenever someone comes up. It's a dispel mechanic too. So a circle will go around one of the DPS players. Here it is on the priest. And the healer, well, he is the healer in this case, but the healer is waiting to dispel the person that has the circle as soon as everybody in the party gets out of the circle. So since I just got out, he's going to dispel him, because once he does, it'll freeze anyone else that was in the circle before. So it's kind of like a nice check where the party is kind of mechanic before you dispel. So if you get rooted on this fight, you know why. And also, if you do get rooted, this boss walks out of your melee range and just laughs at you and just pelts you with ice shards. And the priest just gave me paints up. It was good to see. This is a no voice bug, so seeing defensives go on me at a good time is a good indicator. I hope they change the shields on this boss a little bit. Either change the Dark Exile mechanic or reduce the time it takes for him to cast a shield. Like, he just casts the shields way too often, for my taste. Gonna be interesting seeing all the things they change in Mythic Plus throughout Season 1. Once a lot more people are doing these dungeons, usually a lot more changes go into effect, because the feedback gets to the right people. Again, I'm waiting for Touch of Death here. I missed the critical mark, like he's at 30k. I'm sure I'm about to press it on this global. But if I would have pressed it like half a second sooner at 50k, my Touch of Death would have done way more damage. But yeah, that's the end of Necrotic Wake. I think the notable things in this dungeon are take it easy in the first boss area. CC the mobs are on the necromancers, CC the ads on the second boss, and then explain to your group how the third boss works, definitely. And that's about it. The items in the dungeon aren't really necessary, but they are very impactful if you want to use them. There's quite a few spears around the dungeon, quite a few hammers. I think there's 3 spears, 3 hammers, 2 shields, and 2 orbs total. I might be one off on one of those. Maybe there's 4 spears, but something like that. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I should be getting my last 2 videos out soon, and I'll see you in Shadowlands coming up in 8 days. Peace.